Welcome to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I am joined today by Jason Fishman. He is the co-founder and CEO of DNA, which is Digital Niche Agency. So thanks so much for joining me this afternoon.
My pleasure, Eric. Had a blast on my podcast a couple months back as the guest, and I've been looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, your podcast is called Test, Optimize, Scale. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yes, or Terms of Service. One or the other, right? You were to break it into TOS. So yeah. So tell me a little bit about all the things you do other than having a podcast. So what's your world look like? You know, what's your focus for your agency? Those kind of things.
Absolutely. So DNA is an investor and user acquisition agency. Fell into that and can talk about my past and how all of that was created. But essentially, we've worked on over 400 investor marketing campaigns, leveraging equity crowdfunding platforms, working with fintech apps, working with various types of VCs and funds to bring more investors into their initiatives. And content marketing, advertising, and outreach is how we do it. Okay. Our campaigns have produced hundreds of millions in capital. On some of those fintech apps, I actually have driven billions in assets under management as well. I'm happy to break it all down in detail with your audience here today. And yes, my podcast is Test, Optimize, Scale. I've had over 100 episodes. Industry leaders like yourself come on and have marketing discussions.
Talk to me a little bit about how you ended up in this niche. I mean, that is kind of the name, right? Digital Niche Agency. So what was the impetus that got you into this space?
Absolutely, and appreciate the callback to our name there. I'm an advertising guy. My career was in ad tech before this, working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, full spectrum of budget levels, industries, timelines, started seeing what worked, didn't work. But we were one of 100 other vendors on a campaign and top brands, but still we're told, great, we'll consider you for the next RFP, the next proposal, campaign process, where what we do now, working with startups, we're directly part of our clients' growth. I'm a part of the LA startup community here, wanted to get involved with early stage companies and created an agency around it, DNA, in 2014. Now, at that time, it was a lot of programmatic advertising campaigns, influencer campaigns, but some of our clients were running into issues with their finance. And I saw we were always brought into capital raise discussions, whether it was working on the marketing section of a business plan, working on an investor presentation deck, having the initial marketing campaign going, but to set up results that could be scaled with capital, or even participating in investor meetings ourselves. We were always in these conversations about fundraising. And around that time, I was introduced to Regulation D 506C campaigns, which allows for marketing targeting of accredited investors for the purposes of capital raising.
Okay.
I was also told that there was new legislation in process, Regulation CF, Regulation Crowdfunding, which allowed for retail investors, so not just high net worth, but virtually any adult to invest in these campaigns. And the light bulb went off because suddenly we were able to use our skill set to bring on these investments that our clients were so badly looking for. We saw success in some of our early Reg D campaigns. I was able to tap into data partnerships I had to reach high net worth, high household income audiences across various investor behavior subsets. We were introduced to more groups accordingly, had Reg CF campaigns prepped, and day one, back in May of 2016, when Reg CF went into effect, we had advertising live, started working on just to throw another term out, the Regulation A campaigns, which as of today, you could raise up to $75 million with Regulation A, up to $5 million with Reg CF. We were able to drive the right investor traffic, even at this point, build up our own investor databases, have over 1 million investor profiles that I'm able to upload for advertising targeting. I'm able to reference for LinkedIn outreach and various types of tactics to bring the right audiences, the right investors to engaging funnels.
Nice. So that's great. So you've got the full sort of spectrum in that category, and taking something that a and I'm going to say like a client, a company you're working with keeps asking you to do, and turning that into a solution is a really smart way to think about it. We were building our portfolio. We realized that we primarily were in fintech and insurance, and like, hey, I think maybe that's where we should focus because we're really good in those categories. So along that journey, it's a little risky, or maybe it's not, to have decided to go after startups or people who are trying to raise money, isn't it? Like, isn't that a risk that you're taking? Because I typically go after kind of larger companies, and they already have some big budgets in place.
Absolutely, and I admire that. There are unattractive elements to working with startups, budget being one of them. Also, the fact that the success rates of startups are not great. So we see companies that are here today and not around next year.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. On the other side of it, it's very fulfilling, very exciting when we see these campaigns work and we're able to have that big impact. But yes, campaigns are shorter in many respects. There's an element of this campaign has to produce the next budget in some of the situations. So, I could talk about the pros and cons at length, but we've been able to be of value. We've been able to work with companies that have brought in thousands, tens of thousands of investors. We had a campaign wrap today at its full goal and brought in over 4,000 investors. We've had campaigns bring in over 40 and raised over 140 million. So it's got its ups and downs, but at the same time, we have excellent case studies. We've been very effective at it, so keep being brought back into it. I'm also interested to see where the space goes over the next 5 to 10 years. I believe this will be the primary vehicle that fundraising takes place. We're working with publicly traded companies as well too, mostly micro cap, but companies that have big initiatives around what their stock is doing and stimulating trading volume with the right CEO branding and the right volume of eyeballs around what they do. So it's going to be very, very fun to watch the evolution occur in years to come.
Yeah, it is an interesting kind of shift that could happen. I was at a conference. We went to one, and it's in Nashville, called 3686, which is an investor conference there, and went to a meeting around family offices. And so family offices, 10 years ago, there were 1,000 family offices. Now there are 10,000 family offices. Mm-hmm. And they control more money than any of the VC or any of those firms. Like, they outstrip them, like, in a big way. So someone like you who can get to those people and show them the value of participating in that, that's an interesting and alternative way of thinking about the money. So what's your favorite part? And then, like, what's one thing you wish all these companies knew before they came to you to looking for help? So favorite part, and then, like, but before you call me, think about these things.
Our favorite part is scaling. When we see audiences, creatives, funnels converting at high levels and ramping those up and being very intentional about what's going to be driven the next day, the next week, the next month. It's a lot of fun. It's very exciting. I know the clients enjoy it.
Yeah.
I wish they knew that they needed to market, they needed to audience build, they needed to create a strategy beforehand.
Yeah.
We're often brought in by a family office where this is a portfolio project, and they're looking to bring in more investors, more capital using these filings. Or one of the FINRA regulated portals where these deals live, sites like Start Engine, WeFunder, Republic, Net Capital, the list goes on. We'll get brought in once an issuer, a company issuing shares, is getting ready to go live, or they're already live. Maybe their campaign's slowed down. Where if we started the process beforehand, if they started mapping out the full strategy, the roadmap, the content calendar around what's going to be posted where and when, which means who's going to be talking about the company, what's the third-party validation going to look like all the way through, they would have much more meaningful pushes, especially in the early stages of their raise.
How soon or early do you want to be involved? Like, is it what's too soon and what's too late?
Sure. A month to 6 months is ideal. We're usually brought on once it's live, and we work with some of those family offices, work with some different funds, groups in real estate, some groups around digital assets and investments around that, emerging tech. We bring in LPs, limited partners, investors into their fund. So, in many cases, it's live, but I would recommend at least a month for planning and using additional time periods to further craft the creative, as well as to audience build and compliantly run pre-launch marketing.
Very nice. Okay. Well, I'm going to go to a commercial break, and when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about kind of what you see as the future for this. So like you talked about this being very kind of a disruptive space. So why do you say that? What does that mean? And how do you guys play in that part? So talking today on The Claw with Jason Fishman. He is CEO and co-founder of DNA, which is a digital niche agency with a very nice niche. They very much follow their name. We will be back in just a minute to continue the conversation.
The Claw podcast is brought to you by Liger. Liger is a hybrid marketing firm combining a brand strategy consultancy and a production house that offers the full range of content and creative services. We can be your entire marketing department or your entire marketing department's favorite people to work with. We save the world from boring, broken marketing by putting businesses in brand therapy so they can express their most authentic, memorable selves. And then we share their story so they can be known. For more information, visit ligerpartners.com and follow us on our social media platforms.
And we're back. You're listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I'm talking today with Jason Fishman. He's the co-founder and CEO of an agency called DNA, which is digital niche agency. And they specifically focus in this very interesting category around raising money and helping companies, find those next rounds that they need to continue to scale or maybe even to get there in the first place. So Jason, what do you see if you look in your crystal ball? What are the stuff that you see happening kind of specifically within what you do, but maybe around it that's going to impact it? The things that we need to be aware of.
Sure. Over the past 18 months, I should say since early 2022, there has been skepticism around the market, really age-old, and you can look at some of those thoughts, some of those considerations years before that. But working with founders, they've expressed to us slowdowns in the VC community, less deals being backed, less capital deployed, maybe just more towards some of the vertical leaders, some of the groups that everyone's hopping onto in the private equity world, and have a large degree of respect for what occurs there. So this isn't in contrast to private equity and the whole industry, but at the same time, if a founder is in dire need of capital and needs those next levels of finance to excel the growth of their organization, there are other tools available to them today. And we've seen equity crowdfunding stable this year, not acting as high as it was at different points, kind of post-pandemic during market rallies. But as a marketer, if we're able to work with a company on taking their offering online and having a pitch video that encapsulates what a sit down may look like with a prospective investor, even beyond that, being able to show the product, the facilities, third-party validation from lead investors, clients, customers, publishers, everything into a very brief, concise, high-impact video and offering page presentation, and having all of the info there available to all investors, and looking at disenfranchised audiences and bringing everyone to the table so that they have the same access to the deal flow on the investor side and can get involved early stage, as well as on the founder side, bringing them to these investors. We only see this space continuing to grow. It's a very valuable utility for a founder to be able to apply into their model, apply into their investor discussions. I work with founders that say our offering page is our PPM, our private placement memorandum. We drive all prospective investors over there. And I'm working offline at the same time, continue to retarget these folks with ads, have content going. It's all in the follow-up for us, have all this stuff running digital for us. And if you could bring more investors to the table, fantastic. So we look at it as this, win-win scenario all across the board. Again, we work with private equity groups. We have their deals listed so that If the round gets funded further, the next day there's more traction based on the validation that signals to the market. And we anticipate, various types of banks, financial groups, you name it, really everyone getting involved in the next 5 to 10 years. It is going to be mainstream. And the groups that position themselves now may have thousands, tens of thousands more investors that have participated in their deals or in their past round, if they're a founder, that they're going to be able to take from one initiative to the next.
Very cool. And one of the things that is nice about this space is that it becomes validation for the company beyond the raise. Like it leads into the marketing overall. It's something that, you're getting the name out there, people start to pay attention to it. There's a lot of equity that can be established in just doing this part of it right. I've talked with a lot of angel investors or VCs or others that like companies to go through something like what you're doing because it becomes market validation. It's like, oh, if you can raise the money for it, then now I'm ready to give you the next round, because it sort of proves within the market that this thing is something people want and they understand. Because you got to simplify that, right, to get people to part with their money.
You absolutely do. And I look at this as a marketing exercise overall. We're getting third parties, publishers, as I mentioned, lead investors, customers. We're getting various types of, may I say, influencers and other groups talking about the brand online, linking to them a high volume of times. We are getting traffic, we're getting conversions, we're getting an audience that in many cases acts as user owners. So if this is a business to consumer focused organization, these could be future customers, future ambassadors of the brand.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, they have an interest in the company.
Right.
If it's business to business, and many of the top campaigns are, you could have strategic investors come on board and different types of future clientele that want to get involved. And if nothing else, like you mentioned, a deep portfolio of marketing wins that you're able to reference throughout future conversations.
Well, in this, you'll see a movie or a TV show where they look back and they'll do like the people go to dinner with someone and they're like, I just invested in this company. It's named after a fruit, and they're like premonition that it's going to be successful. You want to, when you're at a table with someone who's smart like that, you want to hear, what are you investing in? What do you think's interesting? That type of thing. Because even if you're not going to invest, it may be a product you watch or a service. Mm-hmm. They're early indicators of where things are going and what may happen next. Speaking of what may happen next, so is this it? Are you going to like sell this at some point and retire? Do you have some other idea in your mind? Like what's next for Jason Fishman?
Sure. I'm going to go off your last point to answer this question because it shows some of the directions that DNA, myself, can go. I make a lot of offline, online comparisons. So that dinner table conversation of an investor telling their friends, hey, I just backed this company. You should get involved with them. In fact, I could do an intro. We see that happening with LinkedIn messaging where an investor will come on board, say, hey, I'm putting in 50K. And I'm going to tell two of my buddies are coming in too. They're also going to come in at this level. I'm going to send an email to get that going. We see that happening with advertising at larger scale. All these relationships that are building tend to be the most valuable part for the issuers, for the groups involved, including myself. Where's DNA going? We think the industry hasn't fully arrived yet, and we want to be at the forefront as we get to those next stages. That's my primary focus at the moment. Perhaps more financial publishing, where right now we work with investor email newsletters, podcasts, conferences, various types of websites in tech and startup culture, and groups that can promote our clients. Perhaps some more partnerships around that. This could be a launch pad for future companies that I'm a part of, and whether it's whatever seat I have at that table, or wherever role I'm playing in that organization. That's really what I'm going after. There has been consolidation in the space. There have been marketing agencies who have been acquired. That hasn't been the route we've chosen because, again, we think the numbers, the entire vertical is not quite there yet. Obviously, things change over time. Market conditions have a big impact on what we do and can be outside of predictions. If you were to ask me what was going to occur in the space March 2020, I would have been wrong. And we saw the Robinhood investors and this huge emergence of retail hitting the market. So, we'll be there. We'll be, shaping some of the market perspectives, at least on marketing, if not industry wide. But that's really where my goals live today. Also taking the podcast to the next stages, more publishing opportunities. We want to see a higher success rate industry wide of entrepreneurs, and want to do whatever we can to support that and share what we see working in the market.
Yeah, what's interesting about what you're talking about is talking about this being kind of a new category, because people like you and I have been doing these kind of things for a while, but it still is new. We just happen to be early adopters or understanders of it, and then more and more people are coming into it. And, I was on a podcast the other day, and the guy was like, what are you doing about the fact that there's, what do you say, unprecedented change or something? It's like, isn't there always unprecedented change? Like, just don't we live in a constant state of that? When have you ever said, oh, things are just amazingly stable? Like nothing, like that just isn't a thing. So I think we just use it as an excuse. So it's been a great conversation. You're in a very interesting category. It's one of the more unique ones. I've done a bunch of these, but it's a very unique category that you guys are living in. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. There's very attractive elements for us that have driven us closer and closer into the space and overall world of investor marketing. As you mentioned, there's some downsides to the business model at times, working with early stage organizations, but being able to touch the finance world, be involved in a variety of different investor events worldwide. It shows us a lot of different areas, a lot of different potential outside of just our ad campaigns that we can directly be involved in. I appreciate that feedback, and that's what gets me up in the morning. That's why I do it.
And so, what's the best place for people to track you down if they want to connect?
Sure, I'd point you to LinkedIn. Okay. Jason Fishman on LinkedIn. You of course can reach out on our site, digitalnicheagency.com, but always looking to connect. I welcome a warm marketing conversation anytime at that. And could always get you in touch with the experts on my team to give you different strategy ideas on top of that.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks, Eric.
So you've been listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtz-Claw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I've been speaking today with Jason Fishman. He's co-founder and CEO of DNA, the digital niche agency. We will put information on him in all of our show notes. And thank you for listening. Until next time.